to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot.
Good afternoon, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Tuesday, which means welcome back to Ross Gregory. How are you, Ross? Oh, slight delay, Ross. The internet's not great. Can you hear us,
all
Ross?
Good, Steve. All good, thanks. Hope everyone's all right.
Yeah, Ross, massive delay on your internet signal, mate. It might be better going out and coming back in, and what I'll do is I'll run the ads.
It's not. You're breaking up. You're breaking up as well, Steve. I assume it's my internet.
It is, mate.
It is,
mate. If you want to go out and come back in. Do you want to go out and come back in, mate? Yeah, I'll take you out, Ross, because we're at a Mexican standoff here. All right, I'll take you out. Ross clearly having issues with his internet. He will sort it out, I'm sure. We'll let him get transferred over. He sometimes has to move from his Wi-Fi to his hotspot. No problems with the internet at this end. Just double checking because I have had a few problems myself. But yeah, we are okay now. Right, okay, there he is. Ross, can you hear us now? No, not good at all. Ross, clearly being affected by the weather, and not a great deal I can do. What I'll do is I'll play the ads, I'll give Ross an opportunity to come back in, and then we'll get cracking with the show. A big thank you to all of our sponsors, as always. Thanks to Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, and our website skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free, and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Garden of Healing Dispensaries, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists. You can find them at thegohd.com. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, which are handmade in Cumbria, and you can find them at mrvickys.co.uk. If you want to make an order, give them a call on 01768 210 102 or email info@mrvickys.co.uk. Thanks to Blowhole Breweries, you can get a selection of beers, and the cans are in the design of the old Newcastle United entertainers strips. Blowholebrewery.co.uk. Thanks to Melly's Carpets and Beds, laying our reputation, one recommendation at a time. The best quality around at the cheapest prices. Melly's Beds and Carpets.co.uk. Email sales@mellysbedsandcarpets.co.uk or give Melly a call on 01670 632 216. And thanks to United Group Travel Limited, UK Coach Holidays in Morpeth, 01670 362 460 or mobile 07957 141 654. Graham, your driver, Beverly answering your calls and looking after you on your tour. Some great deals coming up there. Get yourself onto the website to check them out. Thanks also to Media Arts, who do all of our videos and help us with the technological side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, nufcmatters.com. If you want to subscribe to the channel, then hit the subscribe button below. Hit the thumb up, which is the like button, which does us a big favour with the algorithm. And click share. Share it to Newcastle United, Facebook groups or Twitter accounts or your own social media to help our community grow. And if you want to join the channel, hit the join button. And for as little as $1.99 a month, you can get some members-only videos and chances to win some fantastic prizes. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. Don't forget as well that we do events through NUFC Matters. And this one is the next event coming up, Friday the 24th of February, an evening with Newcastle United legend Steve Howie. Friday the 24th of February, Tyneside Irish Centre, and tickets are available at £50 from newcastlelegends.com. If you also go onto Voucher and search for the event, you can pick up a bargain on there. Don't forget, we also support the food bank on this channel, www NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk is where you can find the Matchday Bucket. You can make a virtual donation to the Matchday Bucket 365 days of the year to keep helping the food bank in Newcastle. Okay, welcome back, Ross. Hopefully your internet is a bit better sound-wise. The picture's not great, but I can hear you, I think. Go for it.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? Testing 1, 2, 3.
It's a bit better, Ross. The picture's awful, but we can hear you. You're in sync, which is I guess the main thing. I just want to say thanks to Wetter Than an Otter's Pocket. I'm sure you just become a member to so I'll read that name out. But thank you for that. Much appreciated joining the channel and becoming a YouTube member. Don't forget the Steve Howie quiz. The giveaway, goes on tonight. You might win some tickets. Just listen to the question and place your answer in the comments. Okay, I want to look at this guy. The Chronicle's running a story tonight about Newcastle potentially in the market for Yusufa Moukoko, and been linked with this guy. He's a free transfer. Launch bid is in inverted commas. Not sure where they are at with this particular move. Ross, it's in the Chronicle tonight. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so Moukoko, very highly rated young striker at Dortmund, has kind of really made his breakthrough over the last 6 months. 18 years old, scored a few goals in the Bundesliga for Dortmund, and is attracting a lot of interest around not just the Premier League but wider afield. He was a bit of a bolter for the German national squad as well. Forced his way into the World Cup squad for Qatar, despite his relative kind of youth and experience. He's he is that kind of highly rated. So it's an interesting one. Look, I don't know how far any kind of interest is developed, but one thing to say, and Lee Ryder touches upon it in his Chronicle piece today, that Newcastle are looking further than just this transfer window. That they're looking at young players, the best young players that they can potentially pick up across Europe, but across South America, and we've seen with Garang Kual in Australia as well. They are looking beyond this transfer window. So Moukoko, I think, is a deal that it could potentially be done in the summer. He's out of contract in the summer. Obviously, Dortmund are trying their best to keep hold of him, but a free transfer, if it becomes available, whether it be any bits of compensation to be paid, it's something that would appeal to Newcastle, but appeals to a lot of other clubs as well. Chelsea have been linked with him. Barcelona have been linked with him. So he is somebody who's absolutely 100% on Newcastle's radar, and somebody that they want to monitor and keep an eye on. And because he's out of contract this summer, then he's able to speak to clubs outside of Germany this month, and he's representative, so they'll obviously be having talks. So whether it's a I've seen that there's been reports of a verbal offer. Again, I don't think that Newcastle have been a little bit coy on that, and I don't think it's that far developed. But it's one of those where they'll certainly be keeping an eye on him. We've talked on this show enough times about FFP and about the kind of the financial restraints that might come into Newcastle's transfer business in the next kind of 6 to 12 months. It's something like this where you can get a deal for a young player who's very highly rated for not a lot of money, or potentially on a free. That will appeal to Newcastle because of the FFP restrictions that they've got as well. So yeah, it's just today. It's a really, really interesting link. One of the more exciting young talents in European football at the minute. So it could be a watch this space type of move, I think.
Well, it's a new name, and the Chronicle running the story tonight. So Ross might send us the link. We'll stick it into the chat. Anybody's got any questions? Anybody got any players they want to chuck in the mix today? Then please do. Toonami01 says apparently his wage could rise to 150,000 with bonuses by the time he reaches 20. Interesting stuff. We will watch that with interest. David Knight says, any news about Maddison? Anything in the pipeline? David, thanks, mate. I'm well. Ross, the Maddison deal, again, we get asked about this probably more than anything else on here, mainly because it went public. Newcastle did make a bid for him, so it's a one that people really do want an answer on. Anything new on that since we last spoke last week?
Not to the best of my knowledge, Steve. No, I don't think that one's moved on. Obviously, James Maddison is still injured. He won't be featuring for Leicester tonight at St James's. He's still obviously a player that Newcastle retain an interest in, but I'd be very surprised if this one makes any kind of move this month. I think it'd be one more to revisit potentially in the summer. I don't see Leicester wanting or being willing to sell James Maddison this month. But look, he for me, he's the type of player that I think that Newcastle could really do with at the minute. I think he's got that kind of creative edge. He can pick a pass, he can score a goal. He's something a little bit different to what Newcastle have in those kind of midfield areas. That's not knocking or Joe Willock or anybody in that area. I think he offers something a little bit different to what Newcastle have got. They don't have that real sort of playmaker, that kind of number 10 creative spark. So I can see why the interest there, and I can see why fans are really keen to potentially get him in. But I don't think it's something that will happen this month at least.
Okay, get your questions in. Plenty to talk about. As we know, Ross, was the Wednesday defeat, Sheffield Wednesday, of course, a blessing in disguise? Our squad isn't equipped to fight on three fronts in some fans' views. What do you think?
Oh, not for me, John. No, I don't say it has been a blessing in disguise at all. I understand where you're coming from. I understand why some fans might think that way, but for me, you've got to be winning every game. Newcastle are only really in two competitions, which is the Cup and the FA Cup, and I think that everybody wants to have a really good cup run. I understand where the thought process is coming from, because look, Newcastle's squad isn't particularly strong in depth, and it isn't particularly well equipped, and that showed against Sheff Wed, because as soon as a few changes were made, the squad limitations were severely exposed, and Newcastle they're going to have this problem between now and the end of the season, is that I think the first 12, 13, 14 players in the squad, those first 14 probably are really good, really comfortable in the roles that Eddie Howe was asking them to do. Once you scratch below that surface, once we maybe get 2 or 3, 4 or 5 injuries, then it becomes a little bit harder. But I would always want it to progress in the FA Cup. It's a magical competition. Fortunate enough to have been at Wembley a few times to see FA Cup finals, and I'd love to return again to watch Newcastle in an FA Cup final. So it might help them in terms of the league push towards the end of the season if players aren't playing as many games. But I would take an FA Cup run every day of the week.
Yeah, me too. I've covered it enough on here over the last couple of days. But yeah, moving on now to the quarterfinals of this cup. So hopefully things will be a lot brighter in the morning. George Bainbridge says, I went to the doctors yesterday. He told me my cup fever had halved, but he reassured me that my remaining cup fever is of the League Cup winning virus. George, I hope you are right, mate. Okay, plenty of questions coming in now. Mr. Anderson says, any news on Solano being at the under-21 game, and is he in line for the job? I haven't heard whether Nobby Solano has been on Tyneside, but if he has been at the under-21 game, you may have hit the nail on the head, but who knows? It's a job that's up for grabs, Ross.
Yeah, so Nobby was at the 21s last night. He was spotted there. I don't know what he was doing there. If he was just there watching beef, if he was there, on something more concrete than that. So maybe it's a game one to watch. In terms of the 21s, my understanding is that Ben Dawes is going to be holding the fort, certainly for the interim period, possibly until the end of the season. Ben Dawson's obviously a highly rated coach around the Newcastle setup and works with the first team, and I think he will still have some input as well as look to after the under 21s until maybe a permanent role's been put in front of somebody. I've heard a few names mentioned with the under 21s job. Nobby Solano isn't one of those, if I'm being honest. I've heard there's a couple of real left field ones which I've started scratching my head at, thinking, ooh, that would be an interesting name to come in. But nothing concrete, and certainly Nobby's name wasn't one of those that was mentioned to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of local talent who've played for the club who would probably be putting their hat in the ring. Steve Watson, Lee Clark, to name a couple. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm sure there'll be no shortage of ex-players putting their CV in with a hope that they can get into Newcastle United. Different players, Steve Howie's got a cushy little number with the Premier League and with Sky, but again, he's got his coaching badges. But what's put a lot of these guys off in the past is ultimately, lack of opportunities in the game, and they've gone off to do other things. Chris Wood.
I'll be honest, Steve. I don't know if an ex-player is the route that they're going to go down. It's not. From what I've heard, it's not the route that they're going to go down. But that's not to say that that's correct. I'd be surprised if they went down the ex-player route, if I'm being honest. I think Dan Ashworth's probably got an idea in his head of the type of coach that he wants to come in and work with the under 21s. He obviously see it as a key position, and Dan Ashworth's got a lot of contacts from his work with the FA, and there's one or two people who he's worked with previously who have been suggested to me as being potential front runners. So yeah, it'd be an interesting one. It's a really fascinating job. It's a great role for somebody, and it's a really important one within the Newcastle structure, certainly ownership, because they want to invest a lot of money into the academy and into developing young players, as well as bringing in the best young players from around the world as well. So it's seen as a really kind of business critical role, if you like. So it'll be interesting to see who they bring in.
Chris Wood to Leeds again. I think Eddie Howe's happy to keep him, isn't he, for the time being, because of the issues that they're going to have bringing in players in this particular window. They can't go gung ho. They're going to keep it all for keep a majority of it for the summer, we would imagine. So I can't see him going to Leeds.
No, I can't see him going to Leeds either. I think certainly, again, like I say, not this month. I think he'll be somebody who Newcastle want to keep a hold of. Eddie Howe wants to keep a hold of. There's only 3 strikers in the squad, really. If there's Chris Wood, there's obviously Callum Wilson and Alexander Isak. It was great to see him back at Hillsborough, but we know the injury problems that Callum Wilson's had, that Isak's had over this season. So I don't see Chris Wood leaving at all this month. I know he probably splits opinion amongst the fan base, and you can see why some fans would be happy if he moved on. But in terms of squad depth, in terms of the role that he plays in and around the club and the change rooms, and what Eddie Howe wants from his kind of more experienced players, I think Chris Wood is a vital part of that at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, Trulls, I know you're not a Chris Wood fan. I know there's a few people, Ross has said, splits opinion 100%, but it's squad numbers. And at the moment, we're not going to be able to bring anybody in that position. We've got Isak coming back in. Wilson's injury record's not great. ASM, if he's not on the bench, he's misfiring. So, Chris Wood is going to be part of that squad, and we've just got to accept it, I'm afraid, and get behind him when he's wearing a black and white shirt. Getting back to the other questions that have been put forward, do you think we'll be okay if we don't sign anybody in this window, says John?
I think the squad will be okay. Yeah, I think it's been okay in the first half of the season without with the numbers that they've got. I think there's a couple of areas which have slight concern in terms of depth, and if there were a couple of key injuries picked up. I think Newcastle have been slightly fortunate in the sense so far this season, and that they've been able to retain a relatively settled team. You know, you can virtually pick the team. I think you can probably virtually pick the team that'll probably play tonight. But you can, you know, the team's been very, very settled for the majority of the season, with the back fours being pretty settled. The midfield and the front players, has only really been one or two changes with the centre forward position or one of the wide or midfield positions. It's been relatively stable, and if Newcastle retain that kind of stability and everybody stays fit and everybody stays healthy, then I think they'll be fine the second half of the season, even if there's no incomings. I do think that it could do with a little bit of a freshen up though, because there's a lot of miles being put into people's legs. We've seen when you scratch the surface a little bit that the depth below that isn't as strong, and I think the Chef Wed game it'll confirmed a few things in Eddie Howe's mind, maybe, but it'll also made him not necessarily open his eyes, but made him realise that, you know, he needs to keep that team as stable and as settled as possible. No injuries, and nobody comes in, then I think the team will be fine. But you would like to see just a little bit more depth, I think, added this window.
Bielsa for under 21 coach, says Terry. Is that one of your left field suggestions?
It's not one of the left field ones that I've heard. But
you can add that to your list.
That's further than left field. That's you know, we're going miles away than the names that I've been told. But no, Bielsa, what a coach, what an appointment that would be. But I don't see him coming in as an under 21s coach at Newcastle.
No. Toonami says you need a booster for your internet. Rossi says, can you order Wood one as well? I'm not sure where you'd plug it. Don't answer that, anybody in the chat. Roger Cook says, could tonight swing Tielemans' thoughts on joining us? Of course, the other Leicester player who Newcastle have been linked with, he should be playing tonight. I mean, they seem to be having a bit of an injury crisis still, Leicester. But yeah, Tielemans, another interesting link with Newcastle, and they'd be prepared to let him go in this window, I think, for the right price.
I think so. Yeah, I don't think he's going to sign a new contract, so he's going to be out of contract, obviously, in the summer, and available to move for free. Obviously, Leicester are saying the right things and making the right noises in terms of trying to persuade him to stay and not giving up and that sort of stuff. But I think if they were brutally honest, I think they understand that he's probably going to leave in the next 6 months, and it'll be either this month with a reduced fee, or it'll be in the summer with on a free transfer. So depends how much they need, the kind of 20 million or whatever that they might be able to, 15-20 million that they might be able to get from this month. For me, he's a really, really good player. I think he's somebody that proved Newcastle's midfield. I think in the right role, if you got him in the right formation, in the right role, I think he would enhance what Newcastle have already got. Newcastle's midfield at the minute is for me, it's quite workmanlike. It's you know, the pressing and the graft and the intensity that the midfield plays with is fantastic. It's and I'm not knocking it. It's something that we've not really seen from a Newcastle midfield for a long time. I do still think it needs a little bit more composure and quality on the ball, which somebody like Tielemans would potentially give you. His vertical passing is fantastic. You know, he's able to spot a pass and release players. He can press as well. He's not just a fancy Dan who strolls around the midfield looking for 1 and 2 football. He can play with intensity. He can press. You know, Leicester's on that. So I think he would be a great addition, and I think it's one that Newcastle may between the end of the transfer window. I don't think it's one that's necessarily dead in the water, that one.
Yep. Take care, Political Bias, having a jog off there, and have a good day, mate. And big shout out to Bad Blood Podcast in the chat as well. Nice to see you back on, mate. Trolls says, is there anything concrete on any players at the minute?
I know that it's a real interesting transfer window, this one, because I think Newcastle, what they maybe wanted or thought they were going to do maybe a month or so ago. I think it's evolving. I think it's changing. I think, you know, the three key areas that they're probably looking at, or they are looking at, is a backup right back, probably to Kieran Trippier. It's that central defensive midfield. It's a potential attacking player and threat. I don't think those three positions have changed. Those three priorities have changed, but maybe it's their order of kind of ranking, if you like, their order of priority maybe has been. So whereas, you know, going into the window, it might have been that a backup right back to Kieran Trippier was seen as the nailed on most important one. That might not be the case now. It might be that actually, because John Joe Shelby's injury has occurred, that the defensive, that central midfield cover is more important, more of a priority. And similarly, you know, they might have looked and thought, right, hang on a second, we've drawn a bit of a blank in the last 2 or 3 games, but, you know, we've been a little bit lacking in terms of cutting edge and quality in that final third over the last couple of weeks. Is that something that we maybe need to just strengthen? So I think it's evolving all the time. I think it's a kind of moving feast, if you like. But the targets are the targets that I've said before on this show, that, you know, there's not 1 or 2 targets. There's a list. Every club goes into a transfer window. Newcastle are no different, with a list of players that they think these could be the options for us. So Tielemans won't be the only centre midfield player. There'll be 3 or 4, and they'll be weighing up which one is more likely to get, which one they can get within their budget, which one is potential for maybe a transfer window further down the line. And it's spinning plates a little bit. So you know in terms of actual nailed on targets, yeah, the right back in Spain, Fresneda, he's somebody that they've looked at. Elements, all definite players that they are interested in, but it's just how and when they can kind of press that button and say, right, this is one that we definitely think that we need and definitely think we can get, and we're going to go and get him this month. And there'll also be targets that nobody's mentioned as well. There'll be a couple of left field signings that or left field targets that haven't been mentioned, who could come later on in the window. So it's I know it's a bit of a wishy-washy answer in a sense, but that's just the way that the transfer business works at this top end. You know, there's be 3 or 4 on a list for right back. There'll be 3 or 4 on a list for the central midfield area, and there'll be 3 or 4 on the list for maybe an attacking threat as well.
Yeah, you don't have to read my name out this time, Steve. I'm not sure Tielemans is the right fit for us. Can't see him covering the ground that the ones we have do. And that's an interesting point, that, because Geordie Toomba Live says Leicester fans say Tielemans' attitude's first class, along with his work rate. Some of our fans are criticising him on seeing him play 1 or 2 games for Leicester. It's crazy. So, yeah, mixed opinions on Tielemans. I think a lot of people would prefer Maddison, but, you know, it's one of those things. Hoping Vardy doesn't play tonight because he always scores against us, says Tom. There was another...
Just going back to Tielemans.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve, just going back to the Tielemans one. I think it's you know, Newcastle aren't going to bring somebody in who they don't think will fit the system that they want. Now, did anybody see the improvements being made to Joe Linton as a midfielder? Did anybody see the improvements being made to Sean Longstaff as that central midfielder? You know, just because, you know, Tielemans plays a certain way for Leicester doesn't mean that he can't adapt and can't change and play in a style that Eddie Howe wants, and you know, adapt to Eddie Howe's coaching and formation and tactics and things like that. I do, but at the same point, you know, he won't have the intensity of a Sean Longstaff. He won't have the intensity and the pressing skills and the drive of a Joe Linton and the ball recovery skills or of a Joe Willock or anything like that. But is that what Newcastle need? Do they need a like-for-like replacement? Do they need another Sean Longstaff? Do they need another Joe Willock? Do they need another Joe Linton? Or do they need somebody who who can do parts of that, but can also put his foot on the ball, can also dictate play, can also release players, be a bit more creative, pass through the lines, beat a player, score from 25 yards, all this sort of stuff, which are let's not focus on what Tielemans can't do. Let's focus on what he can do and what he can bring to that midfield and the different qualities. You don't just want, for me, another Joe Willock or another Joe Linton or another Sean Longstaff. For me, you want another Bruno. You want somebody who can do that pressing and win the ball back, pass and show a little bit of invention in that midfield as well. So that's one of the reasons why Youri Tielemans appeals to me. I think that's one of the reasons why he appeals to Newcastle as well. It's just whether it's somebody that Eddie Howe feels at this point in time is a viable option to improve the squad.
The Clon lad says, is Tielemans better than our current options? Absolutely. With 6 months left on the contract, he instantly improves the squad. Put Longstaff and Tielemans together, you have the perfect midfield. This is Toonami 01. Stephen wants to send Chris Wood to Sunderland with his blessings. Geordie Toomba Life brings up another name. Conor Gallagher is a player that will fit our style perfectly. Still not getting his game at Chelsea, coming on the odd occasion as a substitute. Toon Revival suggesting that PIF being here today might mean that they'll be here to sign off transfers, as it's always down to them if we sign someone, as they are the owners. Interesting points, all well made. Other questions in the chat. Well, PDK saying that could Maddison's injury since the World Cup be a concern? I mean, it could be a concern. At the moment, it's not a concern for us, other than whether he was going to play tonight against us in the quarterfinals of the Cup. But yeah, I mean, it's no one's going to go and sign an injured player, Ross, are they?
No, not at all. I think I've not heard that it's I've not read anywhere that it's a long-term issue or it's a major issue. But obviously he's not playing at the minute. He hasn't been able to train or shake off this injury that he picked up. Unfortunately for him, the last Premier League game before the World Cup, and it meant that it meant his involvement in the World Cup was limited to the training sessions and bench, sitting on the bench. He never got on in that, and he hasn't played since he came back. So I don't know if it's anything more long term or serious. It doesn't sound like it, but I think Newcastle would obviously, if they sign a player, they would do a very, very thorough medical on him. But like I say, I don't think the Maddison transfer is going to go through this month at all.
No, me neither. I think that's one for the summer again, unfortunately, Newcastle fans, and we're going to have to be patient to get that one over the line. Any news, Ross, on the Leazes End East Corner signing another Madrid pump, as one is definitely not enough.
Yeah,
shortage of pumps in the ground, is there?
We could all do a few more extra Madrid pumps scattered around the northeast, I think.
Toonami 1 says there's a lot of talk about players coming in. Surely we have to let some of the weak second string. Obviously, no one will buy due to their high wages. We have more keepers than midfielders. Yeah, there is an imbalance in the squad. Dubravka wanting to come back was a bit of a shock for everybody, I think, including Eddie Howe. A decision, I'm sure, will be made on Karius before the end of the month, if not Darlow. I don't think Karius will want to play a second fiddle to Darlow. Never mind, third fiddle to Nick Pope. So I think there will be a decision made on the goalkeepers. There has to be. But I think on top of that as well, John Joe's injury, as Eddie's pointed out in his press conferences, has changed things a little. And maybe, if we have other suspensions, injuries, whatever, creeping in January, the decisions will be made late in the window. And he did say specifically in the transfer, as far as the transfer window is concerned, there will be no early movement in the window. They would wait and see where they were at towards the back end of it. So they might be doing a little bit of work now on the transfer window, but I would say probably the last week is when we'll see some movement from Newcastle, if at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be late in the window. I think certainly in terms of players moving out as well. You're not going to move a player out or next week until not going to move anybody out until you've got somebody in and lined up as well. So I would expect there to be some interest in some of Newcastle's fringe players, your Ryan Frasers and a couple of players who might go out on loan I know Eddie Howe said that a couple won't go out on loan, but it all depends on who's brought in, and Newcastle certainly won't be leaving themselves short. I understand that, and I agree that not a lot of some of these players just aren't going to be the type of player who takes Newcastle onto that next level. But you still need some squad depth. You still need some cover in certain places, even if it's squad cover, bench cover. You can't leave yourself too short. The goalkeeper situation is bizarre, really. Now you've got Nick Pope, Dubravka, Carl Curious, you've got 4 goalkeepers there, which is obviously one too many. So one of those will be leaving the club this month. There's no doubt at all about that. Whether, again, they're probably waiting to see if somebody maybe comes in and offers a loan deal for Darlow, or maybe even Dubravka, or Karius doesn't get his contract renewed. There'll be some sort of that can't continue. There won't be 4 goalkeepers at the end of the month. But I agree with you, Steve. I think it'll be a lot of deals done in the last week, the last few days, even maybe the last few hours of the transfer window.
Yeah, Tune Revival says, the way I see it is we need to buy quality, about 3 a season. We also need to go and find wonder kids to learn to play alongside top players to be a top side. Sean says, we are in a position we didn't think we'd get in 3+ years, so surely this window is pivotal. Geordie Tumor Life says, Ross is spot on about having different styles of midfield players. How many goals does our midfield score? Not enough, by far, and that is very true. ASM needs some love, says PDK. And Gillespie is 5 keepers, says Toon Army. And Toon Revival says, we're not going to go back in for Costa from Porto and clear out the other 3. Getting on to the other questions that were saved. We can't get Maddison, a different player with energy who would fit our high press style, as Gallagher from Chelsea, a perfect fit, in my opinion, which is somebody who I touched on earlier on. Toon Army also said earlier, what do you think, Ross? £40 million plus bid for Maxi. Would Howe accept that? Of course, Alanson Maximin, is clearly not available for selection at the weekend. What's your view?
Would Eddie Howe accept a bid of 40 million plus? I think it would depend on whether there was a replacement coming in. I don't think why he wouldn't sell Alanson Maximin at this point unless there was somebody to replace him, because whatever you think about ASM, for me he's a better wide player than 2 or 3 others at the club currently. I'd rather have him in the squad than 2 or 3 others. So I think they'll always be looking to improve the squad, and because of the financial fair play, we keep coming back to financial fair play, but because of FFP, there's going to become a point where Newcastle need to sell a player or 2. They're going to need to, and there's not many who are saleable assets who they can get big money in for. You're not going to get big money in for Ryan Fraser if he leaves. You're not going to get money in for Matt Ritchie. You're not going to get big money in for I don't know, Jacob Murphy if he goes, or Carl Darlow or who. There's only 1 or 2 there who are real kind of saleable assets, and there might come a point when Newcastle have to cash in on somebody to help fund the next part of the squad strengthening. So I think the club, if somebody came in with an offer of £40 million for ASM, I think the club would probably be tempted by it. But I'll flip it on the other side and think, is anybody going to pay 40 million for Maxi in his current injury state, in his current form, and his state of mind? Would you pay? Is he a 40 million pound player at this point in time? I'm not convinced.
No, not at the moment. No. I tell you what he does do. He splits the support, because there's a lot of big ASM fans, and there's a lot of people who just think, get rid of him. I mean, for me, this season, we need to get him fit and get the best out of him, because if Newcastle's got any chance of qualifying for Europe and, hopefully at least getting to the final of the Cup, we've got to keep on pushing, and we've got to get him playing for us. He's a Newcastle player at the moment. We've got to get him functioning and playing well. Ross, are Newcastle still interested in Harrison from Leeds? I rate the lad another Howe type of player.
Yeah, he's somebody that the club are interested in. Club will have watched. He's on the list, if you like, of players who they've got an interest in. But I don't think Leeds are in a position or willing sellers at the minute. Again, it might be one that they look at again in the summer. But he's certainly one of those players that they are monitoring and keeping an eye on in case there's a deal to be done at some point.
Okay. Other questions in the chat. Good to see Garen Qual go to Hearts on loan. Good move for him, that, Ross.
Yeah, I think it is. I didn't see. I'll be honest. I didn't really see that one coming in terms of going up to Scotland. I thought he would maybe score. I thought he would maybe score abroad, and whether to Spain or Portugal or somewhere like that. But the more you think about it, the more it kind of makes sense. There's a Australian contingent up at Hearts. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours up the road from Newcastle. So to be able to monitor and keep an eye on him as well. The levels, a good level from to get experience in British football and acclimatise, if you like, as well. So it makes sense on a lot of levels to go up to Edinburgh, and hopefully that deal comes across and he goes there and hits the ground running and gets some good experience.
Yeah, and I think he's playing with a few fellow countrymen as well, so that's gonna be a massive plus for him as well. I would imagine. He's going to feel at home already when he gets up there. Trossard is the ideal signing. He can play left side and cover up front. A couple of questions at the top there about financial fair play. Ross, when Eddie mentions financial fair play restrictions in interviews, is that a subtle way of letting selling clubs know that we're not going to pay over the top on transfers? And an interesting one on financial fair play from Toonami One goes, regarding financial fair play, Simon Jordan says we can spend 200 million over the first 4 transfer windows. That equals 800 million. Liam Kennedy seems to have a different opinion. Surely Simon Jordan knows better. There's been a couple of experts on, and believe you me, Ross, Liam, rest of the people on here aren't experts on financial fair play. I think it's 200 million over the course of the season, not over 4 transfer windows. I think that's where the confusion is, and I think 200 million over that is based on Newcastle's revenue that they've brought in the 14 years under Ashley. So although on the surface it looked to us as if Ashley was doing a great job with the books, it couldn't be further from the truth, because with the cash injection that we've had, the new owners coming in, it limits them to what they can spend until we get a better commercial revenue. So that's where we're at. It's as simple as that. But yeah, getting back to the other question from John, Eddie is smart in press conferences. There's no doubt about it. You've listened to them. I've listened to them. I'm sure a lot of the fans do as well. But he is very clever in playing down signings and whatever. And I'm pretty sure he's had a great chat with Dan Ashworth about what he's going to do in this window and in the summer window. Yeah,
there's no doubt at all. He's very savvy operator. He's a very he's an intelligent bloke. He knows what the situation is. He'll have a very clear understanding of what he can and can't do in the transfer market. There will be a little bit of wiggle room. There always is, but he'll be going into this transfer window with his eyes wide open in terms of what can be done and what can't be done. Some of his I don't know if it's necessarily a subtle way of saying that they won't be paying over the odds, but I think he's just being honest and as transparent as he can and realistic, and while at the same time kind of trying to temper expectations a little bit. But he'll have a very, very clear understanding of what Newcastle can do this window in terms of finances, in terms of transfer fees, in terms of wages. It's not his absolute kind of remit. He's tasked to look after the football side as well. And while he has got himself involved in dealings in business over previously, I think now obviously Dan Ashworth and a lot of that's been taken off his plate. But yeah, he'll be fully aware of what the situation is.
Yeah, I've stuck a poll in the chat actually just about Tielemans and Maddison. We've got this new thing which you can do on YouTube now. So have a look at it. Give us your vote. Who would you prefer to sign from Leicester if we had the option, Maddison or Tielemans? Stick your vote in now and we'll keep an eye on that before the end of the show. Toon Revival says the only problem with the Maxi is his injuries. He's a player but not on the pitch. We can't afford to keep players who can't get on the field. We'd be lucky to get 20 million for ASM, says David. The way that Ross said Newcastle might bring players in the last couple of days sounds like we're going back to the Mike Ashley days, I'm sorry to say. It's down to financial fair play. And I know when I say that on Friday night show, the lads all laugh at us, but, you know, there is something in it. There is something in it. They do have to be careful what they spend in it. And I guess why the lads laugh is because, you know, it's because the likes of Chelsea find a way around the financial fair play. But I still think that will come biting them back on the backside. What they've, you know, the latest signing that they have made, the money that they're going to pay out on his wages. You know, I think a lot of that will get nipped in the bud and will eventually, you know, it'll all stop. Newcastle are keeping the house in order. They need to. Remember how long it took for us to get a takeover done? 2-0-1, the interview with Simon Jordan is on TalkSport the day we got taken over. He owned the club. Surely he knows. Good point. Yeah, look, I remember listening to it. The last 2-3 days, people attacking the ASM is disgusting. He said he was ill. House said he is ill. It's getting boring, to be honest. Trolls, I'll say, yes, I agree. And I'll also say that the social media backlash to Chris Wood has been horrendous. And Sean Longstaff. Lots of people on social media do need to look at themselves and say, why on earth am I doing this? Because it's just, you know, some of the players are on social media, not all of them, but everybody talks and everyone's pulling on that black and white shirt with the best hope and ambitions. I hate to say it, and Ross and I have played at non-league level and managed at non-league level. Ross is a chairman of a club now, and making 8 changes in a team is never going to bode well, especially when 2 of those players are coming back from long-term injuries. And those players haven't played together. And I've seen a lot of people arguing on social media going, well, they train together every day. They should just be able to do that. And look, Eddie Howe clearly thought and had faith in those players taking the pitch in the game of the weekend. And after the game, he also felt he made a bit of a rick. You know, he says, you know, everything's great with hindsight. Looking at the result, of course, I wish I hadn't gone down that route. It's just one of them things. We've got to park that game and hope we don't take a big hangover into today's game, because I hark back to his press conference last week where he said it's all about keeping the mentality and the, you know, the optimism and the, you know, keeping the momentum. Well, you know, he put a bulldozer through it with a team selection at the weekend. And, you know, I don't think it was a message, and I don't think we're going back to the Ashley days at all. It's ludicrous to even think that. It feels like that. And that comes back down to, again, I'm rabbiting on, but it comes back to what Mitch was talking about when the takeover went through, that we'll all have a bit of Stockholm syndrome. It's going to take us a long time to get used to being Newcastle fans with ambition and hope again, because for 14 years we've not had that, Ross.
No, we haven't. And it's sometimes it's the hope that kills you as well, isn't it? You know, it's the expectation levels go up, and all of a sudden now we want and maybe expect these big cup runs and getting into quarters and semi-final, when, you know, previously the cups have been almost there's priority. They've been forgotten about. They've you know, and that kind of creates a little bit more. It just creates different challenges, and it's great that the club's now in this position where fans can be excited about cup competitions and wanting to progress. But I was again, not wanting to hark back to the Chef Wed game, but as soon as I saw that there was 8 changes, it made me a little bit uneasy. Not because those players aren't capable of beating Chef Wed, because they absolutely are. Yeah, of course they are. They're good enough players. But you were bringing in players who, you know, Alexander Isak hadn't kicked the ball for 6 months. That was the one that was a little bit. I didn't like that one. I didn't like the Isak one, because it felt like it had been pre-planned that he was only going to play 45 minutes. Now, this is an FA Cup competitive. It's not a friendly game. It's not a pre-season match where you go, right, you're going to play for the first 45, you're going to play the second 45. It just, for me, it didn't feel right, treating the game like that. But then, you know, Javi Manquillo did okay, but hadn't kicked the ball. Matt Ritchie barely kicked the ball. Jamal Lewis barely kicked the ball. Elliot Anderson barely kicked the ball. You know, there was so many players in that team who were coming in cold that it was a gamble. It could have quite easily paid off, and it probably should have paid off if Newcastle had taken the chances. The reason that they didn't take the chances were that players were very rusty in the main, and not necessarily match fit, and they got done with some clinical play at the other end. So, you know, Newcastle fans, myself included, were desperate for another cup run. It didn't happen, but look, the club's on the up, and the club is in a good hope. When there's expectation, and we just have to, as fans, as journalists, as watchers, as supporters, we just have to get used to that. It's a different feel around the club now, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. And look, that game's, you know, buried. We've got to forget about it. Yeah, we're disappointed. I mean, I spoke to Gibbo this morning about it, and Gibbo was as annoyed as me. You know, I think it's because Newcastle fans have an affinity with the FA Cup, and I know it sounds daft saying it's like our cup because we haven't won it since '55. But we've been to cup finals, we've been to cup semi-finals. There's something magic about the FA Cup, magical, and to see it not given the same due attention and care as the League Cup was disappointing. And all of this stuff that people come out with about, you know, yeah, well, you know, we haven't got a big enough squad, and you know, it's the pressure. Well, that's what it's all about. We haven't been in this position for ages. We're only 5 points away from survival. In fact, we're probably safe now. You know, for me, 2 good cup runs would have been great this season. I wasn't even thinking about European slots. Top 10 would have done me in 2 great cup runs. The problem you have is that if you get knocked out tonight, then you're just playing for league position. Yeah. And that's disappointing. That is disappointing. That will feel, I know it's daft, and I know we shouldn't be like this, but it's hard not to when you've been in a Champions League position for the last couple of months. You know, that it will feel disappointing if we get knocked out. If we've got a 2-legged semi-final to look forward to, it's going to be a lot different. So we've just got to hope that the lads turn up tonight, that Newcastle United turn up tonight, and give Leicester, you know, no chances, and keep a clean sheet, and the rest will take care of itself. So, you know, for me, it's a big game. Diaz from Blackburn to replace Wood, 15 million, says Sean. Not sure Diaz would be the answer, Sean. It's a good shout. We're being linked with lots of players. And I think that would be more likely than some of the bigger names that we're getting linked with. But your thoughts on Diaz, Ross?
I don't think he's good enough to step up and to take Newcastle onto the next level, personally. Yeah.
Diaby, anything more on Diaby? It's a name that's been circulated once again. We talked a lot about him in the summer.
Yeah. Again, I've seen his name pop up again recently, but nothing that I'm aware of. So I couldn't really comment on that one. He's obviously somebody who's been linked over a good period of time now. So that would suggest that there's obviously a very keen interest there, but it's not someone that I've got particularly any inside knowledge on or anything like that.
Joe Linton's best position is centre midfield enforcer. He's taken Maxi's position, then Murphy gets on ahead of Maxi. Surely that answers every question regarding Maxi. Eddie Howe doesn't fancy him. Yeah, I've got to be honest, he clearly doesn't trust him. Certainly didn't trust him in the big game against Arsenal. And again, that hangover that was hanging over the club through somebody saying something or somebody making something up about ASM on the morning of the game. That rumour was circulating 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock on social media about ASM not travelling and not going to be involved in the game. And then it was Craig Hope who, with half an hour to go, broke it on Twitter that ASM wasn't going to be playing. It wasn't, an hour beforehand, 5 minutes before the team was announced, that ASM wasn't in the squad, wouldn't be playing. So I just don't know. That didn't help either. It was a bad day all round for Newcastle United. It's one best to forget in a season that's been joyous and, happy. It has to be said. Wouldn't Diaz be a third striker? Leeds are interested in Wood. Tom, they might well be interested, but Eddie Howe certainly won't sell him in this window. Ross, up front instead of Wood would be an improvement on Saturday's display. You must have seen you play, Ross, thinking you should get a start. PDK says, with Isak saying he's not a left winger, who starts when both fit, Isak or Wilson?
Good question. I think I read the piece where he's said he obviously prefers playing centrally. I do think he can play out wide. Let's get them both fit first before we have this conversation, because my concern with them both is that, you know, Callum Wilson's fitness record we know all about. Isak hasn't. Obviously, he's had his trouble since he came in. Let's get them all fit and both fit first, and then we can have that conversation.
Yeah, House at ASM was ill. What more needs to be said? Trolls, I'm in agreement with you, to be perfectly honest. It was a rumour and that was it. Any news on ASM for tonight? Nothing yet. Keep your eyes on Newcastle's timeline, though. I'm sure if ASM is coming into the ground later on, there's a chance he'll be playing tonight. Isak is my first choice, to be honest, and they spent big money on him, Trolls. So I can imagine that as well. Can Wilson not play a number 10 role? Not sure, Stephen. I'm not sure whether he played the two of them together. I mean, he was asked about it in press conferences earlier on in the season when Isak was injured. You know, if he came back, would he play them? And, you know, he didn't say that he wouldn't, but how can you ever say that? You know, how can you ever say ultimately that you're going to play players together? Because as we've seen already, you're never sure whether they're going to be fit at the same time. Dan Burns said he's not a left back, says Blue Rhythm Boy. I can see both playing, possibly in a 4-4-2 with Wilson and Isak as strikers. Different games, different formations for different games, I would agree with you. Steve, the rumour came from a Newcastle YouTube channel, allegedly in the know. Absolutely disgusting putting that rumour out. Not backed up with facts. Same channel saying 2 players signing yesterday. Okay, thanks for that, Geordie Tune My Life. For 60 million, it's Isak for me, and I would agree. They've played big money on him, and he probably will play. Wilson has played on the wing. I'm not sure whether that would be where he would end up. Botman, Shaw, Burn, Trippier, hoping they all return tonight. Tom, I think it'll be a lot more of a team that we recognise tonight. Okay, Leicester at home tonight, quarter-final tie. This is the 10th League Cup quarter-final that we've played. We've just won one of those in 1975. Of course, we went on to the final that year. 8 o'clock kickoff against Leicester City. It's live on Sky Sports. All tickets have been sold out. Just a reminder that there's been an appeal from War Flags to bring your scarf. This is the first time that they've asked you to do this in 2023. Would like to create a sea of black and white to welcome the lads onto the pitch and make it a special night under the lights. And they've got a hashtag, bring your scarf, but most importantly, bring your voices. Away the lads. Leicester were entitled to 5,000 tickets. They took an initial allocation of 3,000. City looked to have only sold around 1,000 tickets. So unused level 7 areas have been released for home sale to fans as a consequence, which was good news for home fans. An outcome must be achieved tonight. The scores are level after 90 minutes. It's going to go straight to a penalty shootout. The winners will advance to a 2-legged semi-final, played on a home and away basis in the weeks commencing January the 23rd and 30th this year. And the semi-final draw will take place after Wednesday night's tie between Southampton and Manchester City. Okay, Newcastle United in a quarter-final, Ross. What's your take tonight?
Oh, it's huge. It's a huge game. It's massive, this game. I'm really excited by it. I'm really looking forward to it. I don't think it's going to be an open game. I don't think it's going to be a game where Newcastle will kind of blow Leicester away. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope first 7 minutes like we had on Boxing Day down at Leicester. But I think it's going to be really cagey, really tight, really a nip and tuck game all the way. But I hope they can put Saturday behind them. I think they can. It'll be 2 different teams. It'll be a really different lineup than what started at Hillsborough. But it's going to be tight, Steve. I think it's going to be really, really tight. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes all the way to penalties and Nick Pope is hopefully the hero again. But I'll be a little bit more positive and go for a 2-1 Newcastle win.
Okay, the availability of ASM obviously not known yet, but we do know that Eddie Howe is going to play his strongest 11. Just so you know, Johnny Evans, Ricardo Pereira, Ryan Bertrand, James Justin, James Madison, Sumare, Prait and Dewsbury Hall are all out for Leicester. Of course, they won their FA Cup game at Gillingham 1-0 at the weekend. And previous rounds, Leicester got to this stage by a spot kick win at Stockport, a 3-0 home win over Newport County, and a 3-0 win at MK Dons. Referee tonight is Darren England, and he took charge of Newcastle's Premier League win at Fulham in October, which has been his only game in charge of us this season. Don't forget, there is no VAR tonight either, so don't be looking at the screen and expecting something to be overturned. The food bank is, of course, in operation tonight opposite Shearer's Bar. Pop over and put money in the bucket because every penny that goes in the buckets prior to a home game, Jamie Rubin continues his pledge to double all the cash donations. Okay, my prediction for tonight, I think it's going to be tight as well. I'm going to go 1-0, and I think they'll win it 1-0. I think I just can't see this being as easy as a lot of people think. Leicester will come, they'll try and shut up shop, they'll try and, get themselves to penalties if they can and give themselves that opportunity to win. But as long as we'll win and we'll get through, that's all that matters. Ross, absolutely. Great to have you on, mate. Great you sorted your internet out. Thanks for all your insight and look forward to getting you on next week, mate. Take care.
Cheers, Steve. Cheers, everyone.